I'd like to welcome everybody out to the April 19th, 2022 council meeting. Call this meeting to order. Everybody stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First up, we got public comments on agenda items only. Does anyone have anything? All right, moving on next to our comments. Go ahead, sir. Go ahead.
It's with a heavy heart that I'm announcing that one of our citizens, Gordon Colson, passed away from a stroke on Sunday. He was a Vietnam War veteran, retired from a full career in the Army as a lieutenant colonel, served at the Secretariat of the Association for U.S. Army until he moved to Sunset Beach. In Sunset Beach, he worked very hard and was the founding chairman of the Committee to Honor American Veterans, and he has served in that capacity from 2013 until he passed. They're responsible for building the memorial in Sunset Beach Town Park. He served the Army, the nation, the community, and Sunset Beach, and we will miss him dearly. Thank you.
Any other comments? All right. Moving on to the amendment and approval of the draft agenda. Do we have anything that needs to be changed on the agenda today? I know we got a sunset.
I've got one item.
Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I'd like to add Sunset at Sunset to the agenda as item number 2 to get an update on Sunset at Sunset.
Anything else? All right. Do I have a motion to approve the draft agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Moving on next to old business. Criteria to allow nonprofit organizations at concerts. Councilman Phillips, this is yours, sir.
So what I've done, there's actually 3 attachments to this. I'd like to skip to the third if I could first. That would be page 7 of the agenda packet. So basically, page 7 is essentially a workflow of how the committee would go through considering the various charities. Having had a chance to look at this, I'm looking for if anybody would have any suggestions or alterations before we move forward with this. Basically, this would give 7 charities each the opportunity to come out twice to solicit for funding. During the concert, they'd be allowed to have 1 table set up, and if they wanted to, have 1 cabana if desired. So essentially, this would be the workflow of how Mr. Nern and myself would go through and determine which charities we would accept. Then we also have the application. It's very much similar to the application for the grant funding that we provide as a town. And it seemed like during that process, we were all very much in line with the criteria we were looking for, such as the percentage of the funding that they have that goes to administration, how they serve the area, the locations they serve, what sort of things would they do with the funding that they would achieve here. And then the first one, which is the charity acceptance notification, would be the notification sent out to the charities once they would be accepted into the program. And does anybody on council have any questions or concerns at this point?
Just a couple of things. I think this works very well. I would suggest that for the location at the concert, we designate where that spot is, and it'll be the same spot every time, which is a minor thing. I think if this is the intention, that we specify that the charities may not trade dates or do exchanges like that, if that fits your concept.
That works for me as well. I think just keeping it a random drawing and that's how it is and that's how they're assigned would be fine with me. I think we can certainly add that, and if we want to specify a location so that's consistent as well, that's probably a great idea as well.
Yeah, and the last thing, I think when they do their display there, they should display the current North Carolina charitable solicitation license or the exemption letter that shows that as a 501c3, they can solicit money.
I think that's reasonable as well. And I agree with all those. You have those.
If I could add one thing, on number 7, where you're saying that they'll not be allowed, it would be good to include a penalty there for if they are or do violate number 7, that is something to the effect of they would not be allowed to continue.
Yeah, I think if they were to violate any of the not regulations, but things we're putting in place here, such as the size of the table, cabana, location, that they would not be considered for a period of a number of years. I mean, I don't know, 3 years, something like that, 2 years, just to get. Anybody have thoughts on a number of years?
I think 3 is a good number.
3.
Agree.
So if we're all in agreement on this, or if we don't have any other concerns, the one thing we would need to do is basically at this point pick a date from which we want to actually post this information out, and then the date at which it would close, so then we can start to determine which charities we move forward with.
2 weeks enough time for y'all to get ready, Lisa? If we were to set the date at the 1st of May, would that give you plenty of time?
That gives time.
So the cutoff would be
Cut off
15
would be-
May.
Yeah, about the 15th. That would give us virtually 2 weeks before the first concert. Would that be enough time, or you want to go ahead and set it for the end of this month, the next week or whatever?
It seems fairly simple. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Set
think
it
the
for the-
1st and the 15th are good dates.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Is there any more discussion in this? Does any other member of the council have any questions? Seems like everybody's pretty much in agreement with this.
Yeah.
With that being said, do we want to have a motion?
I move we accept the criteria to allow nonprofit organizations at our concerts as amended.
Do I have?
Second.
All right, need more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Phillips.
very much.
Mr. Nairns, getting that
Good
together. All right, next up be our new business. Our minimum housing nuisance junk vehicle ordinance. Ms. Anglin, you go with this one.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, this is the first piece in the contract that you all approved at the last meeting for minimum housing standard ordinances, in addition to an amendment to our nuisance amendment draft and the junk vehicle nuisance ordinance draft. It's from page 8 through 42. The minimum housing standard, Mr. Gaines drafted this for us, and it is in compliance with 160D. So it is completely in line with what we need, in addition to the nuisance and the junk vehicle ordinances. So if you are good with these ordinances and the drafts, I need you to schedule a public hearing for May 2nd at 7 p.m. to hear comments regarding the proposed ordinance and the ordinance amendments.
Any member of council got any questions in regards to this issue? Ms. Anglin?
I have a couple quick
Go
questions.
ahead, John.
Okay, the Office of Housing Inspector, in that position that's in there, I'm assuming that we would appoint the planning department or the inspection department director.
What page are you on?
Try packet page 12,
Right.
section 140.04. For the purposes of administering and enforcing the provisions of this chapter, the Office of Housing Inspector is hereby created. The housing inspector shall be appointed by the town council and shall have the powers necessary to carry out the duties. Is that the right person?
Should that be me or my designee? I think that,
Just like we're doing with Mr. Gaines.
Okay.
And then whoever she so chooses, because you don't necessarily have to be a so-called building inspector to be a minimum housing inspector. So there's no certifications involved in it.
Okay, should we make that approval
Mm-hmm.
here? Okay. And then continuing down on the next page, there's several items under the same paragraph at the bottom. It starts talking about issued administrative search warrant in some of these cases and doing inspections. My question is, I know this is according to state, but is that, does the town have the authority to issue the warrants, or do we have to go to some court to do it?
Do you know the answer to that, Ken?
For an administrative purpose, it wouldn't be, you'd still have to go to court to get that done. It's not something that we can just, we would draft it up or we'd go to the court and have that issued through them. As long as the criteria is met to meet the requirements as mentioned in that code.
Does it then become a law enforcement matter? Who would go and get the warrant?
If it's administrative, it would be whoever's defined in the statute, the inspector or the building department. It wouldn't be the police.
Okay.
It's not a criminal search warrant.
All right.
Thank you, Ken.
Go ahead.
Quick question while we're on the inspections part. 140.05. For any inspection to occur, the way that I read this is there'd have to be a search warrant in place. It's just not like the inspector could just walk up to a house and say that, they want to inspect the inside of the house. Am I correct in reading it that way?
That's right. That's correct.
Yeah.
Because at first when I just read it, I was like, wait a second, it gives them authority to
You
just roll up.
Roll
So-
right in. No,
Yeah.
sir.
Mm-mm.
And then while Mr. Corbett's over there noodling on stuff, packet page 17, it's just a quick question. Number 17, it says every habitable room with at least one window or skylight facing directly to the outdoors. The minimum total window area measured between stops for every habitable room, and it continues. Can you explain what's measured between stops?
On the 10% rule, the minimum total window area measured between stops. The stops of the window itself.
Okay.
So if it's just for instance, right here around this casing, that is where the windows, that is the stop
Where it
that holds it in
stops.
place. So
Gotcha.
That's the stops.
Thank you for the clarification.
And these 10% rules are following really just the building code minimum requirements as well. They're not just made up.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
One question. Could we go and ask for permission to check the house? And if they agree, we check it? Will there be some kind of form that they sign so they can't go back later and say,
Not necessarily a form. The way it's been handled in the past is basically is to notify the owner, and basically, we've got a complaint, and we'd like to visit the property if you don't oppose to it. And basically, if they say, okay, no problem, you're more welcome to come in, take a look around the house, as long as there's no trespassing signs, things of that nature, and they give us just a verbal to go in, then it's certainly okay without having anything in writing. I don't know that I know of anyone that's really has anything that has a signature on it. So for someone to sign anyway.
And we could also get other agencies involved if police or fire had visited this home for an emergency situation and saw things that needed to be addressed. Other agencies could be brought in at that point as well.
Certainly. And from the list that I have been looking at, I think the police department has been involved in some of these that Mr. Gaines is getting ready to start sending out notices on. So he had a good meeting yesterday with Lee, and they actually visited several sites, and the troubled ones that we've got complaints on for like a couple of years now, maybe. So he's kind of aware of the troubled areas. So they spent several hours yesterday riding around and looking at these properties.
I'm probably mixing criminal and civil here. That's why I asked. And okay, get a complaint, you go and inspect, and what is the real bottom line until the town can take action to correct? You know, some of these places have been going on for years, you said.
If I understand you correctly, so as far as if, for instance, if Mr. Gerganis goes out and he finds a property that's in violation, and let's just say it's a deck failure, for instance, on the island, that's something that can be looked at. They don't have any other choice but to fix it. And once he sends out a notice and determines that, we need 10 days or 15 days or 30 days, or if it's just got to be completely just abandoned at that point, then we have the teeth here to pretty much make them get it fixed. And if not, then it becomes certainly a legal matter and a court matter. And then the town would certainly step up, and I hope it don't get to this point where the town's got to step in and fix things. That's not what we really want to do. We've got places in the ordinance here that discusses deteriorated versus dilapidated. We have got some, it's in that situation right now, a couple that Mr. Gerganis feels like that could probably go that route. That being said, somebody's got to spend the money to get rid of these properties, whether it be the property owner or whether it be the town. So at that point, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get there and determine whether or not if the folks just simply says, no, I'm not doing anything. So we will be able to see with these properties going forward, something done and something corrected. So that's our main goal, and obviously to have things safe, but and also from a appearance standpoint, to get things looking good. I hope I answered your question with that. I mean,
You did.
And the adoption of these ordinances is step one. This is what gives us the ability to go get these properties cleaned up. Without these, since we can't do it now, all we can do now is beg because we don't have this.
Just making sure we understand on the housing ordinance, the Board of Adjustment is the local appeals authority, according to this code here. But on the removal of vehicles, nuisance, abandoned vehicles, it's the town council. So that's on
That's correct.
page 39. Paragraph B in the middle, right above the 90.8. The appeal shall be made to town council in writing at the next regularly scheduled meeting. So the question is, when it goes to the Board of Adjustment, it's a semi-legal process that the Board of Adjustment does. we don't have a legal process. We just listen and vote.
Right.
So is there any other constraint on the town council in terms of an abandoned vehicle process? It does not seem to be in here, but
There
But-
doesn't seem to be.
I would suggest
guess.
that just be checked. We can approve this.
We
We
can
can always
check that.
amend it
Mhm.
real quick
Mhm.
if that be the case.
And I think
Um,
the difference between going to the Board of Adjustment is that they're going for an ordinance interpretation.
With the
compared
Board of
to-
Adjustment, that's
Right.
correct. But I do think we need to step back and maybe talk to Mr. Reganis about
Mhm.
that today. I can reach out to him today and just
Yeah.
get some clarification on that.
And then just for public understanding and consumption here, a key part of this is if a neighbor or group of neighbors identifies a problem in their neighborhood, the first step is to notify the town that there's a problem. And then the town will have this ordinance to empower the town to go and take action on what needs to be done.
Yes, sir.
And so that's key. The last thing I've got is just clarify in focus, the company that we've hired to do this is the one that does essentially all of the preparation work, the investigations, the documentation, the legal paper preparations, et cetera, taking the burden off of the town staff to do that.
Right.
Okay. I think
And we'll certainly,
that's
as
pretty
we
much it. Yeah.
discussed before, everything will kind of flow through the office, through our office.
Yeah.
And document, and then after we will forward it straight to In Focus, Mr. Reganis, and then he'll prepare, and we'll get into a little bit more later on, but he'll prepare like a monthly staff report, so to speak, maybe just a spreadsheet to kind of that you can take a look at and see where we at, and as cases evolve and close and things of that nature, so that way you'll know what's going on.
Is there anything that precludes us from sort of publicly announcing what actions we've taken against which properties?
Mm-mm.
So in addition to what's in here, we can publicize that we have taken action against certain properties
Absolutely.
as sort of a deterrent for people to argue against the process. Okay. That's all. Thank you.
I have one
Go ahead.
comment and one question. Comment is, I found this to be a very comprehensive document. It covered, I felt, almost everything possible. So I think it's a good step for the town. It's a good step for town council to vote positive on this. I think it was very, very good. One question on page 13 under housing, under preliminary investigations, notes and hearings. It says the housing inspector, and that's you, right, Lisa?
Mhm.
A hearing will be held before the housing inspectors. So there's going to be hearings held where people can appeal, but it's going to be in front of you, obviously, or your designee.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
It'll be the designee more than likely.
Yeah.
That's what we're going. That's what we're going to try to do. We got a
One
lot
alibi.
going on.
One alibi for clarification. This is very comprehensive, but just to be clear, this ordinance is one in accordance with all North Carolina general statutes.
Yes.
And two, this is essentially the same set of policies, at least that InFocus has worked up, and it applies to other communities in our area and in the state.
That's
So
correct.
we're not breaking new ground or
Mhm.
anything. We're staying in line with what's going on in North Carolina.
Town to
Okay.
town. Yes, sir.
That's
Thank
fair.
you.
That's a good statement.
Is there any more further questions from council? Comments?
No.
If not, what is the pleasure of council in regards to doing the public hearing for the May the 2nd meeting? Is this what y'all want to do? I need a motion.
I move that we approve and set up the public hearing for May the 2nd on this ordinance.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Moving on next, number 2, the sunset on sunset discussion. Ms. Joseph, you have the floor, ma'am.
You want me to undo it? The location where Sunset at Sunset has been held for a number of years is looking more and more like it is not going to be available due to a hopefully pending contract on that property. Tara and I have met with the Sunset at Sunset Committee, and Dustin and I have worked on relocating the Sunset at Sunset Festival, and we feel confident that we can move this festival to the town park with ease.
Go ahead, Ms. Joseph.
As Lisa said, when I spoke with the representative of that property, he told me that they could not give me permission until July 1, because if the property sold before July 1, people could start building because they could get their permits. If it did not sell until July 2nd, then they couldn't start building because they wouldn't have enough time to get their permits. But we decided that we did not want to wait because it would cause too much anxiety for vendors, the committee, me. So we've already started to prepare, and I know that Lisa is working and Dustin to try to get us as much property there as we can get. For parking, we're going to have to, I know that Tara gave you the new budget. I know we're going to spend more money this year because we're going to have to shuttle people because there is no parking, as you well know. So I think it will all work out just fine. But we need your approval to get this started.
And I would also request that you all authorize me to contact North Carolina Department of Transportation to request the closure of Sunset Boulevard North from the roundabout to Shoreline Drive West. And then the town owns from Shoreline West all the way to the water already.
Is there anything we can do to sort of for that day close the boat launch and close the boat launch parking so that we can use the boat launch parking? Is that included
Yes,
in what
that was my next request,
Oh,
to
sorry.
contact Wildlife to see if they would allow us to close for the day.
Also, parking under the bridge, would that be possible? Open that up right there?
Mhm.
That's quite a few spots there. We open that up.
And that's another request.
We think with all of that, we'll be okay. Because we'll use certain areas just for vendor parking. We may lose some vendors because people don't like change, but many of our vendors participate in the markets that are in the park. So I think they'll be okay with that. And we've already gotten new vendors. And when we're done here today, my first phone call will be to David Stewart, who represents the property, to let him know that we will not be requesting use of the property. And then an email will go out sometime today to all of our past vendors and the vendors who have already signed up, telling them that we are moving to a new location, to the town park. And if they have any questions, they can contact me directly.
And if anyone attended the market that was in the park this weekend, they had over 100 vendors.
And from what I'm told, did not take up the entire park.
Correct.
Yeah, they had room for more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
How many vendors do you usually have at Sunset
Well, last year we had 140. On average, we're about 125. So, and we are generous in the space we give our vendors. If you've ever gone to the Oyster Festival, those booths are all right up next to each other. We give our vendors a little bit more space. And I will be going to the Strawberry and Wine Festival just to see how they are laying out their booths.
Good. Do we need a motion?
So we just need
Yeah.
a motion to officially move the Sunset at Sunset Festival to the town park and to authorize me to contact NCDOT and Wildlife.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Job well done.
Thank
All
you.
right. Moving on now to the disposition of directives. Does anyone have anything that needs to be changed, added?
I have one upcoming agenda items. Charlie and I had put beach parking on there. Want to take that off for now?
Okay.
Not rescheduled, just
Not
remove it.
reschedule at this time. We'll reschedule.
Anything else?
We need to
We
add the
need to-
public hearing.
Public hearing on 5-2. That's
That's for the housing
Yep,
and
housing
and vehicles ordinance.
And you already have the public hearing scheduled for the text amendment, UDO
Yeah.
text amendment for Article 11, signs.
Is there anything in the budget process that we'll be doing on May 2? Is that,
You'll set the
That's
public
fine.
hearing for that night.
do we need that on the,
Mm-mm.
no, okay.
Because Tara will present the final draft budget to you all at that point and request that you schedule a public hearing for June 2nd, whatever the June meeting date is.
anything
It'll be
further?
June 6th.
Do we have any more public comments? All right, if not, moving on. We need to come out of recess for our last budget meeting since we'll be going in that. So do I have a motion that we come out of recess from our April 12th meeting to go back into our budget for our April 19th meeting today? Do I have a
So moved.
motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Go ahead, Ms. Tara.
If we could recess for just a moment for us to transition down to the table, that would be great.
Go ahead.
Thanks.
So we will start in the revenues and where, can you hear me? Is it working? Okay.
I think it's good.
So I updated the revenues since I got the projections. It's in tab 2. If you put your stuff in the book. Okay.
Thank you, Tara.
So just really quick, the sales tax went up a little bit, maybe about 50,000. Our utility sales tax is pretty flat. Some went up and some went down just a little bit. The total was an increase of about 6,000 between all of them. And so the increases for the general fund before the transfers is 56,000.
Increase.
Increase.
Okay.
That's about how much we gained with getting the projections in. And I just looked at the county projections yesterday for our ad valorem, and we could probably up that by about $3,000, but that's it. So it's pretty close. And that's at 98% collection. The other change is that because we reduced the accommodation tax fund a little bit, because I had budgeted the entire amount requested from nonprofits, but since you all went through and figured out exactly what you're proposing to give to each one, that changed that amount, and so we were able to transfer more into general fund, so that did increase. So because that increased, I decreased the appropriated fund balance by the entire amount of increase. So from general fund balance, it's now down to 290,570, and that was at 349. So that's where that sits. There's some like graphs and things I've done in there just to kind of show you where everything sits. Do you want me to go through any of those specifically, or it's just sort of a visual for you to have to see where we are? I did put in the same chart that I use every year per department. So this is in tab 3. Like it's behind like the draft budget and those charts. It's got little boxes with blue headers on them. So this kind of gives you a breakdown what each department, where their changes were, and it also gives a total altogether of what each of these individual items cost. It just kind of gives you another way to view it. These are all broken out within each department on the notes on the side as well. Like what's in here. This just kind of brings it all together in one place for you. Do you want me to hold it up so you can see what I'm talking about? No? Okay.
Nope.
And then really after that, it just shows you different ways to look at the department as a whole, or the whole budget as a whole, and it's got the pie chart of where each department, where the town spends their money. Most of ours is with our services of police and fire for our citizens. And then within each department itself, there was not a lot of changes other than what we had discussed and where I had forgotten to put in the department supplies for the police department. So I fixed that. And I changed the amount for the nonprofits in the accommodation tax budget. And then really we didn't make any other major changes in the budget before today. I will tell you that the Sunset at Sunset budget is in here. And there is a small increase due to potential extra costs for moving the festival. But they have their own fund balance. They have so it does not affect our general fund. It doesn't affect our tax rate. It doesn't affect anything. They bring in money every year. They have their own reserve. And if they don't bring in revenue to cover all the expenses, they have somewhere, like they have their own basic savings type thing to adjust for that. And then in the coming years, anything we need to adjust, we can for them. Are there any specific questions on any of this, or?
I think so.
So you're seeing a balanced budget, but the balanced budget includes fund balance. I also will report that I submitted the ARP report yesterday, so our annual report is complete for the year. We will not have another report for the town of Sunset Beach until next April, so we have plenty of time to take our next steps with that as well.
Yeah, good
Good.
work there.
Good.
The member of council's got any questions regards to any of these issues? Pretty
None
much
from me.
everything's straightened out.
Good.
Go ahead, Lisa.
So the only thing that we did not hear a solid consensus from you all was on the proposed COLA and the proposed up to merit of 3% and the $500 Christmas bonus for full-time employee. So what we've included right now is a 7% COLA increase across the board and an up to 3% merit, performance merit,
Based on evaluations.
right, based on the evaluations that the department heads
And the Christmas bonus.
and the
Isn't in
Christmas
there?
bonus.
Okay. All right. What's the pleasure of council in regards to this?
I'm fine with all of it. Thinking back to what Jamie said last meeting about a lot of this is due to the federal government and what they're doing with our money and we're not doing with it. And then our employees, the prices are still up for our employees just like they are for us. Gasoline, food, everything. And I want to keep the employees we have. I don't want them going somewhere else. I think we should approve the COLA, the merit, and the bonus.
I agree with that.
Is that a motion?
You don't need a motion. You just
don't
need
need
a
a
consensus.
They just need direction.
So again, to just reiterate what I said the other day, my only concern is with the rates going up that are, from my perspective, no longer transitory, and inflation rates, cost of everything. By just raising salaries with a COLA, you put yourself in a situation down the road that if we've been very fortunate through COVID where people have come to the beach because they couldn't go anywhere else and they're still coming. If we get into a situation where people can no longer afford vacations and you can no longer afford to come to the beach and our revenue drops, or if we get in a situation where people start to default on their mortgages and things of that nature, one of the things that I'm not going to be prepared to do is to raise taxes on the town to cover these intrinsic costs now. Because once you do the COLA, it's there permanently. It's not a one-time deal. It's a recurring cost over the years. And so if it gets to a situation where the town's finances are not as strong as they are you going to be prepared to cut staffing and cut services, or are you going to be prepared to raise taxes to cover the difference? Because those are your options. And during the Great Depression, what they did was they essentially, people were losing their homes, and versus governments cutting services, they increased the taxes, which just exacerbated it. So I just ask you to consider that as you go forward with this. An alternative to this, which a lot of corporate entities do these days, is they don't do, your cost of living increases are not as significant. What they'll do is they'll do a larger bonus structure. So it's a one-time expense. So as it goes out, if the next year is not as good, you're not having to cut staff and do things like that. So that's just a consideration I would like to mention as an option. I'm fine with the amounts, things like that. If it's in the budget, it's balanced. But versus it doing a COLA, do it as a bonus structure that is not a reoccurring cost to the town. Because I just have, my personal belief is I don't think this inflation is going away anytime soon. I mean, I bought, as an example, contact solution the other day. It was $20 for a little bottle, but it's 30% smaller than it used to be. So the value of the dollar is not going anywhere. And again, I think that's our federal government's fault, but now we're stuck dealing with it. So I would just like to throw that out as consideration.
Do you have an amount in mind?
I'm fine with the physical dollar amounts being the same that would go to the departments, but just change the structure with which it's administered.
My idea is just kind of bureaucratic, is let's see what happens next year. As it happens, and I'm not going to argue with the possibility and the potential. I mean, one of the concerns we've had every time we've added a person to the staff is that it's not a one-time cost, it's a career cost that we put into it. And we have to keep that in mind. I think one of the things we do need to keep in mind, though, at this point in time is the challenge of remaining competitive with the other local communities, the county, that we compete with in terms of keeping our staff across the board. And so at this point in time, I think the COLA increase is approved. But I would agree that we do a very serious consideration and see what happens next year.
Just one last thing. We do have to stay competitive. I've been saying that for years. And at this point, I really believe that our staff has not kept up, and I don't think they've been fairly paid. Can't really base a COLA on what happened in the past, but let's worry about next year.
My only comment as a new member to council is what scared me, basically, when I first saw this budget, when it was first presented, was the reliance we have on taxes such as accommodations tax, fire fees, sales tax, and so on, as opposed to ad valorem taxes that we all pay as citizens here. It's a tremendous amount of money we get through those specific taxes I just mentioned. If that ever begins to fall apart, any one of those begins to fall apart, we could be in big trouble. But that's something I think you've lived with here for quite a while. And hopefully it won't happen in the future, but we got to prepare ourselves if it does happen. There's no question about that. No question. So I support the COLA and so on, but boy, we got to keep our eyes closely on the trend of those taxes changing in the future and what it might mean for Sunset Beach. That's it.
So I just would like to reiterate that council needs to be prepared if we go forward with this, that we may be making some hard decisions going forward and maybe setting ourselves up to be in that position.
That's reasonable.
Yes, very reasonable.
Yep.
No question.
So what's the pleasure of council in regards to this matter with the money there? How we want to proceed? I think it's pretty,
Are we in agreement?
I think everybody's pretty much in agreement.
7% COLA, the merit, and the Christmas bonus?
I am.
Yes, I am too. I'm also.
Reluctantly, yes.
Yeah.
So Tara will be prepared on May 2nd to present to you your final draft budget and request for you to schedule a public hearing at that meeting for the June 6th meeting followed by adoption of this budget.
You'll
And-
have
and
my-
so with that one, this budget breakdown, this information will be available to the public to review before the public hearing?
Correct.
And I'll also have the budget message that I write every year. That'll be with this final document too. So it has it sort of broken out or whatever.
Is there somewhere in this process that we need to talk about the impact of the American Rescue Plan reporting that we have done and those funds?
No, because we haven't done anything with that yet. We've taken the standard allowance, which was just what every small municipality was instructed to do that got under the $10 million. Once we receive the second tranche in July, or I think it's the end of July that we should receive it, then we'll go through a process of however you want to handle it going forward. It'll be basically a reimbursement of salaries that we've already paid starting back to March 2021, if council agrees with that at that time, and then come up with a strategic plan of how you want to use the
To
art
use that
monies
money.
in the community or capital, however council sees best fit to move forward with it. It can be a strategic, it doesn't have to be a right away plan. There's no timeline restrictions on it anymore whatsoever at that point. It can be, you can really sit down and be like, what do we want to do with this one time?
So those monies will come in and go into our general fund until we come up with this strategic plan on where we need to put it, how we need to use it, what we're
Right.
going to do.
Well, do we want it just sitting in the general fund? Well, the only way we have to pay any back is if we buy, say, a piece of property and then sell
Yeah.
it.
So we're set up really well with the way that, because we haven't spent any money for it at all at this point. So when we do get the second amount of money, we can use it for salaries going all the way back to March of 2021. So we'll reimburse general fund basically. So then at that point, obviously you can't turn around and put it specifically into somebody's pension fund. Like, there's still things that you have to not specifically do, but any capital, any land, anything that council as a group sees best fit for the town. And then there's no paybacks, there's no restrictions as far as that goes.
So doing this way, going against past salaries, it goes into the general fund, and there's no further accounting that we need to do with that money.
That's correct.
And we get to use that general fund as we currently use in what we think is a priority for the town.
Correct.
Okay. Good solution. Thank you.
Or we could just leave that money there, thinking of what Jamie said, or a little cushion for the future.
You can.
It's up to us. Okay, thank you.
That's our
That's-
strategic plan to think about.
Strategic plan, yes.
Anything else? Not? No more discussion? I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.